Suppose, like many other readers and fans of Joyce, I first saw this in a famous photograph that was taken by Ottokar Weiss almost 100 years ago, in 1915. And subsequently I saw it in the Joyce Tower. And a couple of years ago I was doing a bit of a recital in Geneva for a professor to illustrate some of the songs used by Joyce. And he had borrowed a guitar from a luthier. So when we explained to the luthier what we were doing, he immediately knew the guitar that we were speaking about, Joyce's guitar. So he had a number of guitars there which he was repairing. So that's how I had the idea perhaps that a restoration job could be done on Joyce's guitar. So I put that suggestion to Robert Nicholson, and so he took up the idea and organised everything. So thanks to Gary, we now will soon be able to hear what Joyce's guitar sounded like. During Bloom's Week, John Feely and myself will do a series of lunchtime recitals, primarily Irish songs used by Joyce, because Joyce used a couple of hundred Irish songs, the titles or verses which he quoted, which he parodied, which he borrowed from. He was well familiar with the tradition of Irish folk song, as well as opera and liturgical music, which are better known regarding their influence and their importance for Joyce, but perhaps not so much the importance of folk songs, traditional songs of the people. Songs such as Shularoon, Croppy Boy comes up in an entire episode. Practically every word is cited or parodied in the Sirens episode in Ulysses. And there are many other songs of Irish origin.
Well, it came to be here because Joyce's friend Paul Ruggiero had it after Joyce left Zurich. He didn't take it with him, so it was in Ruggiero's possession. And in 1966, the then curator of the Joyce Tower, Vivian Igo, went to Zurich and met her friend Fritz Sen. And Fritz, I think, contacted Ruggiero, or certainly was aware of the guitar's existence, and sort of mentioned it to Vivian. And Vivian talked to Paul Ruggiero, and he was actually quite happy to donate it to the Joyce Tower in Sandycove. And that's accompanied by a statement from him authenticating that the guitar is indeed the one that Joyce had owned and played in Zurich. Its significance is really that it does show, how musical Joyce was. We know a bit about his musical interests, as Fran mentioned, the piano and that, but he had an even wider range. He was a great singer, of course, but he could accompany himself on guitar, for instance, and play it. We would love to know what he was actually playing in that famous photograph, but we don't. But he clearly had a certain, repertoire and ability to play the guitar as well. So that extends our knowledge of Joyce's musical resources as a writer and a singer and a musician.
Yeah, as far as the guitar itself is concerned, it's not by any sort of great maker of the past or anything like that. So it's not a particularly sort of special instrument in its own self. It would have been a fairly sort of standard instrument of the period. There's no label or marks inside that give me a precise date on it, but from the style of construction, I would say it was made sort of probably early to mid 19th century. So the guitar itself was probably made around 1830s, I would guess. So, obviously the interest about it is that it was James Joyce's guitar. The condition, this is sort of day 2 of the restoration, and the condition of the guitar was, it had obviously had some repair work done to it, I can't tell when, and that had not been done particularly well. So the first thing really was to sort of clean up a lot of mess that was the result of that. And then sort of, fairly typical of a guitar of this period, it's got quite a few minor cracks, particularly on the top, the soundboard here. So I've just been sort of going over it carefully, gluing up any of the little cracks that have appeared over time, and sort of at the same time cleaning up the sort of the mess that was left from the last repair. So you know, again, to sort of keep it all in the period of what it was, I'm using traditional animal glue, which they would have used to construct this. So that's a glue you have to sort of keep warm and use like that. So once all the cracks are kind of cleaned up and the thing is sound again, then I can start looking at, sort of getting it nice and clean, any sort of little bits of cosmetic work, and then the final thing is to get some strings on it and get it into sort of playing condition again. So yeah, you can see from the fingerboard itself, again, sort of typical of the less expensive instruments of this period, was dyed black rather than actual ebony. And so yeah, you can see all the wear marks from where, I guess mostly Joyce himself played it. You can see that you know, he probably wasn't a fantastic guitarist, because most of the wear marks are all around first and second position, so he probably would have just been playing standard chords with the odd razz up there, I think. But he wasn't all over the fingerboard. This would have been sort of a sort of typical parlour guitar of that period. I suppose more in a sort of classical nylon strung tradition than a steel strung guitar. It's not going to look like new again. It's basically going to be sound from the point of view of all the cracks and the damage being re-glued and sound and strung up so it can be played. But all the sort of wear marks, the original wear marks, and you know, all the sign of aging will still be there. So it won't look tremendously different from how it looks now. You know, a bit cleaner and a bit more sorted, but yeah, it'll still look like an old box with strings on. I mean, the guitar itself is actually a very old instrument, and you know, you can trace it back, you know, right back to the 14th century as an instrument, and the guitar actually had quite a flowering, if you like, in the sort of mid-19th century. So there, yeah, not by today's standards, but there was, you know, quite a lot of guitars around at that time, and it was an interesting time for the guitar, because it was when it really did develop into the sort of six-string guitar that we know today. So yeah, it is interesting. I mean, one of the more interesting restoration jobs I've done in the past was some years ago now. There was the guitar maker C.F. Martin, who started the Martin Guitar Company, which is probably one of the most famous guitars around today. And he was originally from Vienna, and he went over to America where he started the Martin Guitar Company. And a private collector over there owns one of the very first guitars he made when he went to America. And they actually sent that over to me to restore, which was quite an honour. And it was a bit scary as well, because this guitar was valued at more than my house was worth. So I kind of got that in and out as quickly as possible. I didn't really want that around, but so that was quite an interesting and job, and quite an honour. And this, while you know, while the guitar is quite simple, it's quite fascinating to work on an instrument that was owned by such a famous person.